My name is Clifton, 68 years old, and I built my technology company from nothing but grit and determination. After 4 decades of 16-hour days and missed family dinners, I finally sold it for $48 million. I planned a celebration dinner with my only son Jackson and his wife Amanda at the most exclusive restaurant in town. Our relationship had grown strained over the years, but I hoped this night would bring us closer. Instead, it revealed a betrayal so profound it shattered everything I thought I knew about family. If you're watching this, let me know where you're tuning in from. Hit that subscribe button and stay with me. You might recognize warning signs I missed. I grew up in a small Michigan town where my father worked at the local factory and my mother stretched every dollar at the grocery store. We never had much, but they taught me the value of hard work and integrity. Those lessons stuck with me when I moved to Chicago in 1979 with nothing but $800 in my pocket and a dream of starting my own business. The early days of Clifton Tech Solutions were brutal. I converted my tiny studio apartment into an office by day and slept on a pull-out couch by night. Many people told me I was crazy to compete with the tech giants, but I had identified a niche in security software that nobody was serving properly. My first big contract came after 18 months of cold calls and demonstrations. I remember the day clearly. I was down to my last $50 when the phone rang with news that changed everything. Within 3 years, I had 20 employees and a real office. By 1986, we had expanded to 3 states. That same year, my son Jackson was born. I married Eleanor after a whirlwind romance, and we were both over the moon when our baby arrived. Those first few years were magical. Jackson was a bright, curious child who lit up every room. I still remember his first steps across our living room floor, arms outstretched toward me, his face beaming with pride. As the business grew, so did the demands on my time. I started missing bedtimes, then school plays, then entire weekends as I traveled to secure new contracts. Eleanor grew increasingly resentful of my absence. The arguments started small but escalated over time. Jackson was 8 when Eleanor and I divorced. The separation was bitter, with Eleanor painting me as a father who chose work over family. That hurt deeply because while I wasn't always physically present, everything I did was to secure Jackson's future. Every late night at the office meant a better education for him, opportunities I never had. Despite the divorce, I made sure Jackson wanted for nothing. He attended the most prestigious private schools. His clothes came from the best stores. His summer camps were where the children of celebrities and politicians went. I thought providing these things showed my love. When Jackson entered his teenage years, I noticed subtle changes. The bright, affectionate boy began transforming into someone different, more entitled, less appreciative. He expected the newest phone model the day it released. He complained when the car I bought for his 16th birthday was the wrong color. Small things perhaps, but they concerned me. Eleanor encouraged this behavior, telling Jackson he deserved everything because his father had abandoned them for work. This narrative took root despite the generous alimony and child support I provided, despite the college fund I'd been building since his birth. When Jackson left for Northwestern University fully paid by me, I hoped the distance from his mother's influence might help him mature. During his sophomore year, he met Amanda. The first time he brought her home during spring break, I was impressed. She was articulate, polite, and seemed genuinely interested in my work. Amanda came from old money. Her family owned real estate throughout New England, and she carried herself with the polished confidence of someone who never questioned her place in the world. What I initially mistook for good manners, I later recognized as calculated charm. Their relationship progressed quickly. By senior year, they were engaged, planning an extravagant wedding that would make most royal ceremonies look modest. I quietly paid for most of it, despite Amanda's parents' supposed wealth. After graduation, Jackson approached me about a position at my company. I was thrilled finally, a chance to work alongside my son, to mentor him, to eventually pass the business to him. I created a management track position and gave him responsibilities that would teach him the business from the ground up. 6 months later, he quit, claiming the work was beneath him. He expected to start near the top, despite having no experience. When I explained that even I had started by making sales calls and troubleshooting customer problems, he accused me of deliberately humiliating him. Over the next 5 years, Jackson and Amanda cycled through various ventures. A high-end clothing boutique that closed after 8 months. A restaurant concept that never made it past the planning stage. Each failure followed by a request for money, first as loans, then increasingly as entitled demands. "Dad, we need $30,000 for a down payment on the house." "Dad, Amanda's car broke down. We need a new one." "Dad, this investment opportunity is guaranteed to pay off." I helped each time, hoping these lessons would eventually lead to growth. They didn't. The requests only grew larger, the gratitude smaller. Meanwhile, their social media showed luxury vacations, designer clothes, and expensive restaurants. When I gently questioned these expenses, Jackson accused me of monitoring and controlling him. As I approached my 68th birthday, a larger company approached me about acquiring Clifton Tech Solutions. The timing felt right. My health was still good, but I was tired of the constant pressure. The offer, $48 million, represented everything I had built from nothing. After the papers were signed, I decided to celebrate with Jackson and Amanda. Despite our strained relationship, they were my family, my only child. I hoped that perhaps this milestone might repair some of the damage between us. I booked a table at Oriole, the most exclusive restaurant in the city, where reservations required connections and patience. I wanted that evening to be perfect, a new beginning for us. If only I had known what was really on their minds. Oriole wasn't just any restaurant. It was the crown jewel of the city's dining scene. Michelin-starred chef Laurent Beaumont personally prepared each dish, and tables were booked 6 months in advance. I called in a favor from a client whose software I had personally customized years ago and secured the best table in the house, a secluded corner with a magnificent view of both the city skyline and the restaurant's award-winning wine cellar. I arrived 30 minutes early, wanting everything to be perfect. The maitre d' recognized me immediately. "Mr. Reynolds, welcome to Oriole. Your table is ready whenever you are." I was shown to the prime corner spot, where a small reserved card in elegant script bore my name. The table was dressed with pristine white linens, crystal glasses that caught the light from the chandeliers, and silver so polished I could see my reflection. "Would you like to start with a drink while waiting for your party?" the maitre d' asked. "Just water for now, thank you. I'll wait for my son and his wife before ordering anything else." I checked my watch repeatedly as the minutes ticked by. 7 o'clock, our reservation time, came and went. At 7:15, I began to worry something had happened. At 7:20, just as I was about to call, Jackson and Amanda finally swept in. Jackson wore a tailored suit that must have cost thousands, his cufflinks flashing gold as he gestured to the maitre d'. Amanda followed in a sleek black dress adorned with what appeared to be real diamonds at her throat and ears. Neither offered an apology for their lateness. "Dad," Jackson said, leaning down for a brief, perfunctory hug that barely made contact. The expensive cologne he wore almost overwhelmed me. "Traffic was insane," Amanda added, though this wasn't an apology, merely a statement. She brushed her cheek against mine in what passed for affection. As they took their seats, I noticed Jackson sporting a watch I hadn't seen before. A limited edition Patek Philippe that I recognized from a magazine article. Retail price, $120,000. Where had that money come from? "You both look wonderful," I said, genuinely happy to see them despite my concerns about their tardiness and the unexplained expensive accessories. "So do you, Clifton," Amanda replied with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Retirement seems to agree with you." "Not quite retirement," I corrected gently. "Just a new chapter." The waiter appeared to take our drink orders. I requested a bottle of Dom Perignon Reserve at $600. It was extravagant, but this was a celebration after all. "A perfect choice to celebrate your big sale," Jackson said. "The first acknowledgement of the purpose for our dinner. 48 million. Quite the exit strategy, Dad." There was something in his tone I couldn't quite place. Not quite resentment, not quite envy, but something adjacent to both. The conversation during appetizers was painfully awkward. I asked about their lives, their friends, their plans. Their answers were vague, redirecting to superficial topics like the restaurant decor or celebrities they'd spotted recently. Throughout the first course, a delicate scallop crudo with citrus and fennel, I noticed Jackson constantly checking his phone under the table. His attention was clearly elsewhere. Occasionally, he and Amanda exchanged glances I couldn't interpret. As the main courses arrived, Wagyu beef for Jackson, Dover sole for Amanda, and venison with foraged mushrooms for me, the chef himself made an appearance. "Mr. Reynolds, I wanted to personally congratulate you on your business success," Chef Beaumont said with a genuine smile. "As a small token of our appreciation for your patronage over the years, please enjoy these special house-made fruit juices. They pair wonderfully with your entrees." 3 elegant crystal glasses were placed before us, each containing different colored juices: ruby red for Jackson, golden yellow for Amanda, and a deep purple one for me. "That's very kind, thank you," I said, touched by the gesture. As the chef departed, Jackson's demeanor suddenly changed. He leaned forward, setting his phone face down on the table, the first time he'd relinquished it all evening. "So, Dad, have you thought about what you're going to do with all that money?" The question came too quickly, too eagerly. "I have some plans," I answered carefully. "A significant portion will go to charity, particularly educational foundations for underprivileged children." Jackson and Amanda exchanged another look. "That's generous," Amanda said, her voice tight. "But surely you're keeping most of it for family." "Family is important," I agreed. "But I've always believed in giving back. I grew up with nothing, and I want to help others who are starting from zero, just like I did." Jackson set down his fork with a little too much force. "Dad, you've worked your entire life. You deserve to enjoy the fruits of your labor. And honestly, family should come first before strangers." I took a sip of water, considering my response. "I've set aside funds for your future children's education," I said. "But I believe the bulk of my wealth can do more good in the world than sitting in investment accounts." The disappointment on their faces was unmistakable. Jackson's jaw tightened, and Amanda's smile became brittle. "Don't you think," Jackson began, his voice controlled but with an undercurrent of frustration, "that the people who supported you throughout your journey deserve to share in your success? Mom sacrificed her career for your ambitions. I grew up practically without a father because you were always working." His revisionist history stung. Eleanor had never had a career to sacrifice. She'd chosen not to work even when Jackson started school. And while I had worked long hours, I'd attended every important event in Jackson's life that I possibly could. "Your mother received very generous alimony for 20 years, I replied evenly. "And you've had every advantage money could buy: private schools, college without debt, startup capital for your business ventures." "That's different," Jackson insisted. "This is $48 million. You don't need all that at your age." The phrase "at your age" landed like a slap. Before I could respond, the orchestra in the corner began playing a slow, romantic melody. Amanda suddenly stood, reaching for Jackson's hand. "Let's dance," she said, cutting through the tension. "They're playing our song." Jackson seemed reluctant to leave mid-conversation, but allowed himself to be pulled toward the small dance floor, where a few other couples were swaying to the music. I watched them go, my appetite diminished by the exchange. Was that what this dinner was really about? A chance to stake a claim on my money? I sighed, looking down at the untouched purple juice the chef had brought. Perhaps I'd been naive to think this celebration could bridge the growing chasm between us. As I sat alone at the table, contemplating the conversation that had just transpired, a tall, broad-shouldered man in a dark suit approached. His posture and alert eyes immediately identified him as security rather than wait staff. "Mr. Reynolds?" he asked quietly, standing just beside my chair. I nodded, curious about the interruption. "My name is Marcus, head of security here at Oriole." He glanced toward the dance floor, where Jackson and Amanda were still swaying to the music, then back to me. "Sir, I need to speak with you about something concerning. Would you mind if I sat down for a moment? Of course, I replied, gesturing to Jackson's empty chair. Marcus sat, his expression professionally neutral but with an undercurrent of concern. He leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice. Mr. Reynolds, I apologize for the intrusion, but I felt it was important to alert you immediately. He paused, seeming to carefully select his next words. While monitoring our security feeds, I observed your son pour something into your drink when you were looking at the menu earlier. The words hit me like a physical blow. I stared at Marcus, certain I'd misheard. I'm sorry, what did you say? Your son added an unknown substance to your purple juice, sir, Marcus repeated, his eyes steady on mine. It happened approximately 12 minutes ago, when you were reviewing the dessert options with your server. Your son reached across the table, while your attention was diverted, and poured something from what appeared to be a small vial into your glass. My first instinct was disbelief. There had to be some mistake. Are you certain it was my drink? Perhaps he was adding something to his own? Marcus shook his head. No, sir. Our cameras have excellent coverage of this section of the restaurant. There's no ambiguity about what I saw. He specifically targeted your purple juice. My mind raced to find alternative explanations. Perhaps a sweetener? My son knows I prefer things less tart. Sir? Marcus said gently. He looked around to ensure no one was watching before he did it. And immediately after, he slipped the vial into his inside jacket pocket. This wasn't an innocent addition. I glanced down at my untouched purple juice. Now that I looked more carefully, I could see a slight cloudiness that hadn't been there when it was first served, a faint residue around the inside of the glass that shouldn't have been present. Would you like to see the security footage? Marcus offered. I can show you discreetly on our security tablet. I nodded numbly, and Marcus produced a small tablet from his jacket. After a few taps, he angled it toward me. The footage was crystal clear. There was Jackson, leaning forward while I was engaged with the waiter, quickly emptying what looked like a small eyedropper into my drink before pocketing it and resuming his previous position. His movements were practiced, efficient, not the actions of someone doing something for the first time. A cold sensation spread through my chest as the implications sank in. My own son had just put something in my drink, something he didn't want me to know about, something requiring secrecy. Suddenly, other moments from recent months flashed through my mind with new significance. Jackson's strange insistence on preparing my coffee when they visited my home last month. The unexplained illness I'd experienced after our last lunch together. The unusual questions about my life insurance policy during a phone call last week. The way he'd asked about my will shortly after I announced the company sale. Sir, Marcus said, interrupting my spiraling thoughts. Would you like me to have the drink tested? We have connections with a private lab that can provide preliminary results quickly. I nodded, still struggling to process what I'd seen. Yes, please. I'll handle this discreetly, Marcus assured me, carefully taking my glass. In the meantime, I suggest not confronting them immediately. If they're willing to do this in a public place, we don't know how they might react if directly accused. As Marcus departed with my drink, I noticed Jackson and Amanda finishing their dance. My heart pounded as I tried to compose myself. How could I look at my son now, knowing what he'd done? How could I pretend everything was normal? They returned to the table, Jackson looking slightly more relaxed after the dance. Where's your special juice, Dad? He asked, noticing the empty space where my glass had been. His tone was casual, but I detected a note of something else: anticipation. Oh, I asked the waiter to set it aside. I lied. I'm saving it for when the dessert comes. Was it my imagination? Or did disappointment flicker across his face? You should try it now, Amanda suggested too quickly. The chef prepared it specially for the main course. I'm pacing myself, I replied with a forced smile. I want to enjoy every part of this celebration properly. Jackson checked his watch subtly. Whatever you prefer, Dad. The next 15 minutes were the most difficult performance of my life. I maintained conversation about nothing of consequence: the restaurant's decor, an upcoming exhibition at the art museum, the unusually warm fall weather. all while my mind screamed with questions. What had he put in my drink? What was he planning? How long had he been contemplating this? And the most painful question of all, how had we come to this? Marcus returned, catching my eye from across the room and giving me a nearly imperceptible nod. He had information. "Would you excuse me for a moment?" I said to Jackson and Amanda. "Nature calls." In the hallway near the restrooms, Marcus was waiting. "The preliminary test showed a significant presence of benzodiazepines, Mr. Reynolds," he said quietly. "A very high concentration, much more than would be prescribed medically. Combined with alcohol, it could cause severe respiratory depression. In other words, potentially fatal. We've preserved the sample for police evidence, should you choose to pursue that option," Marcus continued. "And I should inform you that I'm obligated to report this to authorities regardless, though your cooperation would strengthen any case." I leaned against the wall, suddenly feeling every one of my 68 years. "I need time to think," I managed to say. "Of course," Marcus nodded. "But please don't return to the table and consume anything else. We can't be certain they won't try again." I thanked him, then spent several minutes in the restroom splashing cold water on my face, trying to come to terms with what was happening. My son, my only child, had just tried to drug me. After I'd announced plans to donate much of my money to charity, rather than leaving it all to him, the timing couldn't be coincidental. When I returned to the table, I had made a decision. I couldn't confront them here, not until I understood the full scope of what was happening. I needed to play along just long enough to extract myself safely. "Everything okay, Dad?" Jackson asked as I sat down. "You were gone a while." "Just feeling a little off suddenly," I replied, which wasn't a lie. Might be the rich food or the excitement of the day catching up with me. "Maybe you should try that juice," Jackson suggested again. "It might help settle your stomach." I looked at my son, this stranger across the table, and felt a chasm open between us that might never be bridged again. "Actually," I said, "I think I might need to call it an early night." 10 minutes later, after insisting I was just tired and needed rest, I asked for the check. The $500 meal had barely been touched, but I couldn't stomach another moment of pretending everything was normal. "Dad, you really don't look well," Jackson said, his concern almost convincing. "Let me drive you home." There was an insistence in his voice that sent a new wave of unease through me. "No need," I replied firmly. "My place is in the opposite direction from yours. No sense in you making that trip." "I really don't mind," he pressed. "At your age, you shouldn't be driving if you're feeling unwell." There it was again, at your age. As if I were already infirm, incapable, in need of assistance. Or perhaps, in need of supervision to ensure whatever he had planned worked properly. "I appreciate the concern," I said, maintaining my composure through sheer force of will, "but I'll be fine. The fresh air will do me good." Amanda placed her hand over mine in what appeared to be a gesture of concern. "Clifton, we're worried about you. You really should let Jackson drive you." Their insistence only confirmed my suspicions. Whatever plan they had set in motion required them to stay with me. "I've made my decision," I said with finality, signing the credit card slip and adding a generous tip. "Thank you for joining me tonight. We'll talk soon." As we walked toward the exit, Jackson placed a hand on my shoulder. "Take care of yourself, Dad. At your age, anything could happen." The comment sent a chill through me. It wasn't concern, it was anticipation. In the parking lot, I refused their offers once more and watched them reluctantly get into their luxury SUV. I waited until they drove away before sliding into my own car, but I didn't start the engine immediately. Instead, I sat in the darkness, hands trembling on the steering wheel, trying to process the events of the evening. My phone rang, displaying the restaurant's number. "Mr. Reynolds, this is Marcus. I wanted to check that you got away safely and provide you with an update." "I'm in my car now," I confirmed. "What update?" Our more comprehensive test confirmed what we suspected. The substance in your drink contained a dangerous combination of sedatives enough to cause unconsciousness at minimum, and potentially much worse given your age, and if combined with alcohol, which you were drinking. I closed my eyes, the confirmation landing like a physical blow. "I've documented everything and have the samples secured," Marcus continued. "I'm required to file a report with the police, but any further action would require your cooperation. Would you like me to have an officer contact you?" I couldn't answer immediately. The thought of my son in handcuffs, facing criminal charges despite what he'd done, some parental instinct still recoiled at the image. "Let me think about it," I finally replied. "I need some time." "I understand. Here's my direct number if you need anything." He provided his contact information before adding, "Please be careful, Mr. Reynolds. This wasn't an impulsive act. The calculation involved suggests serious intent." After ending the call, I finally started the car but didn't immediately drive home. Instead, I found myself pulling into an empty parking lot at a closed shopping center, where I finally allowed the emotions to overwhelm me. I wept for the first time since Eleanor had asked for a divorce 20 years earlier. I wept for the smiling toddler who used to run into my arms when I came home from work. I wept for the proud father who had attended his son's college graduation. I wept for the future I had imagined: grandchildren on my knee, family holiday gatherings, the continuation of my legacy through the son I loved. All of it poisoned now, as surely as the juice had been. My phone buzzed with a text message from Jackson. "Made it home. How are you feeling? Should we come check on you?" The concern would have seemed genuine if I didn't now see the predatory intent behind it. They were still hoping to execute whatever plan they had set in motion. I replied simply, "Home safe. Taking medication and going to sleep. We'll call tomorrow." After composing myself, I drove home but took a circuitous route, checking repeatedly to ensure I wasn't being followed. The house I entered was no longer the safe haven it had been that morning. Now every shadow held potential threats. I double-checked the locks, set the alarm system, and even wedged a chair under my bedroom door handle, precautions that would have seemed paranoid hours earlier, but now felt necessary. Sleep was impossible. Instead, I spent the night researching similar cases on my laptop. The pattern was disturbingly common: elderly parents with assets, adult children with financial problems, mysterious illnesses or deaths, followed by inheritance claims. Around 3 in the morning, I started making notes of recent interactions with Jackson and Amanda. The subtle questions about my will and life insurance. Jackson's unusual interest in my medication regimen. Amanda's comments about how stress could trigger heart attacks at your age. By dawn, I had filled several pages with concerning incidents that I'd dismissed individually, but which now formed a damning pattern. I also had the beginning of a plan. Jackson called at 9 the next morning, his voice solicitous. "Dad, just checking in. How are you feeling today?" "Still a bit under the weather," I replied, injecting weakness into my voice. "Might need to see the doctor if it doesn't improve." "Do you want me to take you?" The eagerness in his voice was palpable. No. I have a telehealth appointment later. Just going to rest today." "We could bring over some soup for lunch," Amanda suggested in the background. "That's very kind, but I'm not up for company," I replied. "Maybe in a day or two." After ending the call, I made another to a private investigator named Thomas Harrington, recommended by Marcus from the restaurant. I needed information before I decided how to proceed, and I couldn't trust that Jackson and Amanda wouldn't be monitoring my online searches or bank transactions. "I need complete discretion," I told Thomas after explaining the situation. "They can't know I'm investigating them." "Understood," Thomas replied. "I'll begin immediately and use cash payments only. No electronic trail." My next call was to my lawyer, requesting an urgent appointment that afternoon. Whatever happened next, I needed to protect my assets, not for myself, but to ensure Jackson couldn't benefit from whatever he was planning. The game had changed. Now I needed to understand all the players and all the rules before making my next move. 3 days later, I sat across from Thomas Harrington in a nondescript coffee shop 30 miles from my home. We'd chosen the location carefully far from any places Jackson or Amanda might frequent, with no security cameras that could place us together. Thomas slid a manila envelope across the table. "You might want to brace yourself, Mr. Reynolds. What I found isn't pretty." I opened the envelope with steady hands, though my heart raced. The first document was a credit report for Jackson and Amanda showing 6 maxed-out credit cards, 3 personal loans in collection status, and a mortgage 2 months in arrears. They're over $400,000 in debt, Thomas explained. Despite the image they project, they're financially underwater and sinking fast. The next document showed a life insurance policy taken out on me just 2 months ago, with Jackson as the sole beneficiary. The coverage amount, $5 million. They used an independent broker and paid the premium in cash, Thomas noted. The policy has a double indemnity clause for accidental death, which would pay $10 million. My stomach turned as I continued through the documents. Internet search histories from Jackson's laptop showed queries for undetectable poisons, drugs that mimic heart attack, and how long before an inheritance is released after death. He wasn't careful about covering his digital tracks, Thomas said. Probably thought no one would ever check. Credit card statements showed purchases from chemical supply companies and underground pharmacies operating through the dark web. The amounts were small individually, but painted a disturbing picture collectively. The investigator I hired to follow them documented 7 visits to casinos in the past month, Thomas continued. Jackson appears to have a serious gambling problem. He lost over $30,000 during that period alone. Photos showed Jackson entering high-stakes poker rooms, emerging hours later looking haggard. Other images captured Amanda shopping at exclusive boutiques, carrying bags from designers whose items started at thousands of dollars. They're living completely beyond their means, Thomas concluded. And based on their financial records, they're weeks away from complete collapse. Their house is scheduled for foreclosure next month. The final document was perhaps the most disturbing, a draft obituary for me that had been saved on Jackson's computer, dated 2 weeks before our dinner. It detailed my life, my accomplishments, and how I was survived by my devoted son Jackson and his wife Amanda. I closed the folder, my worst fears confirmed. And the restaurant incident? Thomas nodded grimly. I obtained the security footage through official channels. It's unambiguous. The lab results confirm the substance was a combination of powerful sedatives that, combined with alcohol, could cause respiratory failure. Given your age and the dosage, it would likely have been fatal. Is there evidence this wasn't the first attempt? I asked, recalling my unexplained illness after our previous meal together. Your medical records show elevated levels of the same compounds during your emergency room visit last month, though in smaller amounts. The doctors attributed it to a medication interaction at the time. For nearly an hour, we reviewed the evidence Thomas had gathered. The picture it painted was clear. My son and his wife had been planning my death for months, driven by financial desperation and greed. What are my options? I finally asked. You have enough evidence for criminal charges, Thomas said. Attempted murder, conspiracy, poisoning, these carry significant prison sentences. The thought of Jackson in prison still pained me, despite everything. And alternatives? You could confront them with the evidence. Perhaps negotiate some form of rehabilitation for Jackson in exchange for not pressing charges. But I must caution you people, this desperate rarely change their minds about their objectives, only their methods. I thanked Thomas for his thorough work and paid him in cash as agreed. My next stop was my lawyer's office, where I had already begun the process of changing my will and securing my assets. The revisions are complete, Howard Franklin, my attorney of 30 years, confirmed. Your son has been removed as beneficiary from all accounts and trusts. The new will directs the bulk of your estate to the charitable foundation we established, with provisions for your future grandchildren when they reach 25 years of age, provided they meet the educational and character requirements we outlined. Howard hesitated before continuing. Clifton, as your friend as well as your lawyer, I have to ask, are you planning to press charges? This is attempted murder we're talking about. I sighed, the weight of the decision heavy on my shoulders. I haven't decided yet. I want to confront Jackson first, understand how it came to this. If you do, Howard cautioned, do it here, in my office, with security present. People capable of what you've described can be unpredictable when cornered. I agreed to his terms and asked him to arrange the meeting. 2 days later, Howard called to confirm Jackson had agreed to come in, under the pretense of discussing estate planning following my company's sale. That night, alone in my study, I found myself looking through old photo albums. Jackson's first birthday, with cake smeared across his beaming face. His little league games, where he would wave frantically whenever he saw me in the stands. His high school graduation, where he'd hugged me and whispered, "Thanks for everything, Dad." Where had that boy gone? Had money and materialism corrupted him so completely, or had the seeds always been there, watered by his mother's bitterness and Amanda's influence? As I closed the album, my phone rang a number I didn't recognize. "Mr. Reynolds, this is Detective Lawson with the police department. We received a report from security personnel at Oriole Restaurant regarding an incident involving your son. I understand you may be hesitant to pursue this, but I wanted to inform you that we're opening an investigation based on the evidence provided. The decision was being taken out of my hands. Perhaps that was for the best. There's more you should know," I said, and began sharing the additional evidence Thomas had uncovered. By the time I hung up, the detective had scheduled a formal interview for the following day. The machinery of justice was now in motion, whether I was ready or not. The confrontation with Jackson was set for 11 the next morning. As I prepared myself mentally, I realized I was mourning my son as if he were already gone. In many ways, the child I had loved was gone, replaced by someone I no longer recognized. I spent the night revisiting memories, grieving what was lost, and steeling myself for what was to come. By morning, I had found a strange kind of clarity. Whatever happened next, I would face it with the same determination that had built my business from nothing. The stakes were different now, but the resolve was the same. The son I had known was gone. Now I needed to deal with the man he had become. Howard Franklin's law office occupied the entire 32nd floor of a downtown high-rise. The conference room he'd selected for our meeting featured floor-to-ceiling windows with expansive city views, but I barely noticed the scenery as I waited for Jackson to arrive. 2 security officers in plain clothes were positioned discreetly in the corner. A court stenographer sat ready to document everything. Howard had insisted on these precautions, and now I was grateful for his foresight. At precisely 11, his assistant announced Jackson's arrival. "Mr. Reynolds is here. Mrs. Reynolds is with him. Please ask Mrs. Reynolds to wait in the reception area," Howard instructed. "This initial meeting is for Mr. Reynolds and his son only." I could hear Amanda's protest from the hallway. "I should be there. We're family." "It's a condition of the meeting," Howard replied firmly. "You're welcome to wait or to return later." After a brief, hushed argument with Jackson, Amanda apparently agreed to stay behind. Moments later, the conference room door opened and Jackson entered. He looked polished and confident in an expensive suit, his hair perfectly styled. Only the shadows under his eyes hinted at any stress. He approached with his hand extended and a practiced smile. "Dad, good to see you. Feeling better, I hope?" I didn't rise from my seat or take his hand. After a moment of awkward hesitation, he lowered his arm and sat across from me. "Is everything okay?" he asked, glancing at the security officers. "What's this about? Your assistant mentioned estate planning." Howard placed a folder on the table between us. "Before we begin, Mr. Reynolds, I should inform you that this meeting is being officially recorded and transcribed." Jackson frowned. "That seems unnecessary for family business." "On the contrary," I said, speaking for the first time. "It's essential given the circumstances." "What circumstances?" Jackson shifted in his seat, his expression guarded. "Dad, you're acting strange." I opened the folder and removed the security still from Oriole, showing Jackson clearly pouring something into my drink. I placed it on the table, facing him. "Let's start with this," I said quietly. The color drained from Jackson's face. He stared at the image, then back at me, his mouth opening and closing without producing words. "The substance you added to my drink contained enough sedatives to be lethal," I continued, my voice steady despite the pain tearing through me. "Especially when combined with alcohol, which you knew I was drinking." That's not," Jackson stammered, then stopped, visibly recalculating. "There's an explanation for this." "I'm listening," I said. He ran a hand through his hair, disheveling his perfect appearance. "It was just something to help you relax. You seemed stressed about the company sale. I thought it would help you enjoy the evening more." "So you secretly added it to my drink without my knowledge or consent?" I asked. "And you researched undetectable poisons and drugs that mimic heart attacks because you were concerned about my stress levels?" His eyes widened at the mention of his search history. "You've been spying on me?" "I've been investigating an attempt on my life," I corrected. "An investigation that has uncovered quite a lot, Jackson." I proceeded to lay out the evidence: the life insurance policy, the financial disasters, the gambling debts, the previous poisoning attempt that had sent me to the emergency room. With each new revelation, Jackson seemed to physically diminish in his chair. "This isn't what it looks like," he insisted, though his voice lacked conviction. "Then what is it?" I asked. "Help me understand how my son became someone who would try to kill his father for money." Jackson's facade finally cracked. His shoulders slumped, and when he looked up, his eyes were filled with a mixture of desperation and resentment. "You have no idea what it's like," he said bitterly. "Growing up as Clifton Reynolds' son, everyone expecting greatness, following in your footsteps. Do you know how impossible that is? How nothing I ever did measured up?" "So this is my fault?" I asked incredulously. "Your attempt to murder me is because I set the bar too high?" "You never saw me." Jackson's voice rose. "You saw a future version of yourself, an extension of your legacy. Never just me." "That's not true," I said, memories of baseball games and school plays flooding back. "I loved you, still love you exactly as you are." Jackson laughed, a hollow sound devoid of humor. "As I am? You don't even know who I am. When was the last time you asked about my dreams, not just my achievements?" "This isn't about poor communication, Jackson. You tried to kill me, twice." He flinched at the baldness of the accusation. "It was Amanda's idea," he said, the words tumbling out now. "We're going to lose everything. The house, the cars, her family's respect. She said no one would question it if a man your age had a heart attack after a rich meal and a few drinks." The betrayal stung anew, hearing him shift blame so easily. "And you went along with it. You don't understand what she's like when she doesn't get what she wants," Jackson said, his voice dropping to nearly a whisper. "And the gambling. It got out of control. I kept thinking one big win would fix everything." "Mr. Reynolds," Howard interjected gently, "given what you've admitted, you should know that the police are already investigating. Detective Lawson has the evidence we've presented here today." Panic flashed across Jackson's face. "Dad, you can't let them arrest me. It would kill Mom. Think about your grandchild. Amanda's pregnant. The news of a grandchild, delivered as emotional leverage rather than joyful announcement, was the final wound." "I am thinking about your child," I said. "What kind of father would you be, Jackson? What lessons would you teach? That when money gets tight, murder is an option?" Tears filled his eyes. Whether from genuine remorse or fear of consequences, I couldn't tell. "Please, Dad, I'll get help. I'll do anything. Just don't let them take me away." I looked at my son, this stranger wearing his face, and felt an immense sadness. "Here's what I can offer," I said finally. "I won't actively pursue charges against you if you agree to 3 conditions." Hope flickered in his expression. "Anything. First, you enter a comprehensive treatment program for gambling addiction and undergo psychological evaluation. You stay as long as the doctors recommend, no shortcuts." He nodded quickly. "Second, you come clean to Amanda about everything, the gambling, the debts, all of it. No more secrets." His agreement came more reluctantly this time. "Third, you agree to supervised visits only if you want to be part of your child's life. You will not have unsupervised contact with my grandchild until treatment is complete and professionals deem it appropriate." This condition clearly stung, but he nodded again. "I should warn you," I added. "The detective may proceed regardless of my wishes. The evidence is substantial. But I won't actively support prosecution if you meet these conditions." Jackson reached across the table, attempting to grasp my hand. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. I love you." I withdrew my hand. The words that had once meant everything to me now rang hollow. "Actions have consequences, Jackson. This isn't something that can be fixed with an apology." His face crumpled. "What can I do to make this right?" "I don't know if you can," I answered honestly. "Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt, but getting help would be a start." Howard outlined the next steps: the treatment facility I had arranged, the legal documentation of our agreement, the financial arrangements that would cover rehabilitation but provide no additional funds. As the meeting concluded, Jackson looked broken, nothing like the confident man who had entered an hour before. "Can I tell Amanda about this myself?" he asked. "Yes," I agreed. "But if you don't tell her the complete truth, I will." He nodded, then paused at the door. "Dad, for what it's worth, I am sorry." I couldn't bring myself to respond. Some wounds were too fresh, some betrayals too profound. As he left to face Amanda in the lobby, I remained seated, emotionally exhausted. Through the glass walls, I could see their conversation, her initial confusion, then shock, then anger as Jackson presumably confessed. When she looked toward the conference room and met my eyes, her expression wasn't of remorse, but of thwarted calculation. In that moment, I knew she had been the driving force behind the plan, though Jackson had been a willing participant. I watched them leave separately, Jackson with slumped shoulders, Amanda with rigid posture and fury in every step. The gulf between us now seemed unbridgeable, but at least the truth was finally in the open. Sometimes, illumination, however painful, is the first step toward healing. 6 months passed, marking half a year since that fateful night at Oriole. The seasons had changed, winter yielding to spring, then blossoming into early summer. The world outside continued its rhythms, indifferent to personal tragedies and transformations. I sat on my porch, watching goldfinches dart between the feeders I'd installed throughout the garden. Their bright yellow plumage caught the morning light, bringing color to a world that had seemed monochromatic for months. My therapist, Dr. Marina Collins, sat in the adjacent chair, her notepad balanced on her knee. Our weekly sessions had moved outdoors as the weather improved. Her suggestion that nature could be healing proved surprisingly effective. "How are you feeling today, Clifton?" she asked, her voice gentle but not pitying. "Better," I replied, and meant it. The nightmares are less frequent now. In the immediate aftermath of the confrontation with Jackson, I'd suffered recurring dreams of poison in every cup, of shadows moving through my house at night, of the sun. I remembered being replaced by a malevolent stranger. Dr. Collins had helped me process the trauma, one painful session at a time. "Have you heard from Jackson this week?" I nodded. His therapist sent a progress report. He's been clean from gambling for 5 months now, attending daily support groups, doing the work, it seems. The criminal investigation had proceeded despite my reluctance. Jackson had ultimately accepted a plea deal. The evidence was too overwhelming to fight. His sentencing had been influenced by his immediate entry into treatment and my statement to the court. He'd received 3 years of probation and mandatory psychiatric care rather than prison time. "And how do you feel about that?" Dr. Collins asked. "Conflicted," I admitted. "Part of me is glad he's getting help. Another part wonders if I'm being naive again, believing in change that might not come." "Trust is earned," she reminded me. "You're right to be cautious, but recognition of a problem is the first step toward solving it." After our session concluded, I drove to the headquarters of the Reynolds Foundation, my new purpose in life. The downtown office hummed with activity as a dozen staff members worked on various initiatives: educational scholarships for underprivileged youth, technology grants for rural schools, mentorship programs for first-generation college students. Francine, my executive director, greeted me with a tablet displaying our latest impact metrics. "We've funded 37 full scholarships this quarter," she reported proudly. "And the coding program in Appalachia has doubled enrollment since last year." The foundation had become my legacy, more meaningful than the business I'd built and sold. Here, my money was transforming lives, creating opportunities, breaking cycles of poverty and limitation. The work gave me purpose during my darkest days. My phone buzzed with a text message from Amanda. Appointment at 2. Will you be there? Despite everything, Amanda had stayed with Jackson. Whether from love, stubborn pride, or simply having no better options as their financial house of cards collapsed, I couldn't say. The pregnancy had progressed, and my future grandchild was due in 3 weeks. Our relationship remained strictly transactional. I would support the child's education and well-being, but trust had been irrevocably broken. All interactions happened with third parties present, a precaution that once seemed extreme but now felt necessary. At precisely 2 o'clock, I arrived at the obstetrician's office. Amanda sat in the waiting room, her pregnancy now prominently visible. Jackson was conspicuously absent. He has a therapy session, Amanda explained, not meeting my eyes. He said to tell you he's sorry he couldn't be here. The doctor's appointment proceeded with polite formality. The ultrasound showed a healthy baby boy, my grandson, moving actively in the womb. Despite the circumstances of his conception and the fractured family he would be born into, I felt a surge of protectiveness toward this innocent life. Have you chosen a name? I asked as we left the office. Jackson wants to name him after you, Amanda said, surprising me. Clifton James Reynolds. The gesture touched me unexpectedly. That's thoughtful of him. He's trying, Amanda said, her first unguarded comment in months. I don't know if you believe that, but he is. 2 weeks later, little CJ, as he was immediately nicknamed, entered the world at 7 pounds, 6 ounces. I met him the following day, holding his tiny form with a mixture of joy and trepidation. His unfocused eyes and perfect miniature fingers awakened feelings I thought had been permanently extinguished. He has your eyes, Jackson said from the doorway of the hospital room. I turned to see my son, thinner than before, with a new humility in his posture. The expensive watch and designer clothes were gone, replaced by simple jeans and a button-down shirt. May I come in? He asked. A question that would have been unthinkable in his previous incarnation. I nodded, and he approached cautiously, keeping a respectful distance. How are you, Dad? The question seemed genuine rather than perfunctory. Taking each day as it comes, I answered honestly. The foundation keeps me busy. And you? Jackson sat in the visitor's chair, his movements careful, as if afraid to disturb the fragile peace between us. 274 days without gambling, he said. The longest I've been clean since college. That's significant, I acknowledged. I don't expect forgiveness, Jackson continued, his voice low to avoid disturbing Amanda, who was sleeping. What I did, there's no excuse. But I want you to know I'm doing everything I can to become someone different, someone better. I studied my son's face, looking for signs of the manipulation that had characterized our interactions for years. Instead, I saw exhaustion, contrition, and something that might have been hope. It's a long road, I said finally. I know, and I'll be walking it the rest of my life. He glanced at his sleeping wife. Amanda's in therapy too now. Reluctantly at first, but it's helping both of us understand how we enabled each other's worst instincts. As we talked quietly, I realized something had shifted. Not forgiveness that might never come completely, but perhaps the first tentative steps toward a different kind of relationship, one based on reality rather than fantasy, on boundaries rather than blind trust, on earned respect rather than obligation. Over the following months, our family dynamic evolved into something new. Supervised visits with CJ became the framework around which tentative communication was rebuilt. Jackson's continued progress in therapy provided small stepping stones of trust. Amanda's gradual acknowledgement of her role in our family's fracture opened doors previously shut tight. My home security system remained armed. I still checked my food when dining out. Trust, once shattered, could never be fully restored to its original state. But like a broken bone that heals stronger at the fracture point, sometimes relationships can be reconstructed into something more honest, if less innocent. 1 year after that night at Oriole, I invited Jackson, Amanda, and CJ to the foundation offices. As we toured the facility, showing them the tangible results of the charitable work funded by the money they had once coveted, I saw something change in their expressions. "This is what you meant about making a difference," Jackson said, watching a video of scholarship recipients describing how the funds had changed their lives. "I didn't understand before." "Money is just a tool," I replied. "It's what you build with it that matters." Later, as we shared a carefully prepared lunch in the conference room with food I had personally supervised, Jackson asked a question that surprised me. Would the foundation accept volunteer help? Nothing financial, just time. "I have skills that might be useful." It was the first offer he'd made that asked for nothing in return. "We could discuss possibilities," I said, cautious but not dismissive. That evening, alone in my study, I reflected on the journey of the past year. The betrayal that had nearly cost my life had also, paradoxically, stripped away illusions and pretenses that had clouded our family for decades. I had learned painful but necessary truths: that love without boundaries enables destruction, that generosity without expectations can breed entitlement, that trust must be earned repeatedly, not granted permanently. Jackson, too, had learned that actions have consequences that money can't erase, that rock bottom sometimes provides the foundation for rebuilding, that genuine connection requires honesty, not performance. As I looked at a recent photo of CJ now crawling and babbling, I felt cautious hope for the future. Not the idealized future I had once imagined, but something more grounded in reality. A future where relationships were built on authenticity rather than obligation, on actions rather than words. The wealth that had nearly destroyed us might, paradoxically, create a legacy of genuine value not through inheritance, but through example. Through showing that true worth comes not from what you have, but from what you build, what you give, and who you choose to become. Looking back, I can see now that while $48 million nearly cost me my life, it also, strangely, gave me the chance to truly live with clearer purpose, with authentic connections, and with the wisdom that comes only from weathering life's most painful storms. Have you ever experienced betrayal from someone close to you? How did you handle it? The journey of healing is different for everyone, and I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and share it with someone who might need to hear that even our deepest wounds can become sources of wisdom. Thank you for listening. And remember, sometimes our greatest challenges reveal our true strength.